Hello again. We are in our second episode of Moments in History, and it has been an absolutely crazy, frantic week at work. So I am thrilled to be sitting down and talking about writing and researching and history and those sorts of fun things. I am Linda Shenton-Matchett, and I am an author of Christian romance and mystery historical fiction. And I thought this week I would answer your questions. Some I have gotten through emails and Facebook, others interviewed from bloggers and that sort of thing. If you are interested in asking me a question that I don't answer tonight, please put them in the comments section or send me a private message and I will get to them at a later time. So are you ready to talk about writing? First, the question that I get asked the most often is where I get my inspiration. And I will tell you, as a writer, everywhere. I see people on the street, in the mall, or I may read a story that I didn't really like the way it came out at the end, or let's see. I went to, for example, this is my book On the Rails, and it is about Fred Harvey and the Harvey Girls. And that came as a result of my trip to Arizona. We had never been there before, went to see the Grand Canyon, and along the way we visited and learned about Fred Harvey, a restaurateur in the 1880s, and his Harvey Girls. And I was absolutely fascinated. So I did a lot of research, and reading these women's stories as far as why they went to work for him and that sort of thing really intrigued me. So I decided to write a story about them. My book, Love's Harvest, which is my first publication, is a retelling of the biblical book of Ruth. And I set it in between 1922 and 1946. So that's another way to get ideas, is to redo a story. Like West Side Story is a redo of Romeo and Juliet. So that's another way. Another one that I have tonight is lots of show and tell. This book is called Requisitioned. And when I read this book, it gave me the idea of the story that I wrote called A Doctor in the House. And so I can get my ideas just about anywhere: newspaper articles, magazine articles, that sort of thing. So lots of different places where authors get our ideas. So write in the comments if you have ever read a book and you didn't like the way it ended. You thought the author went a different direction or the wrong direction, or you would have resolved the story differently. Because again, that's another way that authors get ideas for books. So, okay. Another question that I often am asked is, what is my writing process? And I will tell you, no two authors have the same process in their writing. Some of us sit down and just fingers fly over the keyboards and stories just kind of appear. That's so not me. Other writers outline, and that is what I do. In fact, more show and tell. So this is my chapter outline for the current manuscript that I'm working on, called Murder of Convenience. And what I do is I take the basic concept, which for Murder of Convenience was that a young woman has a disability and her parents decide that she needs to be taken care of. They won't live forever, so they want her married off and taken care of. So they arrange a marriage for her, set during the 1940s, during the World War, which arranged marriages really weren't done at that point anymore. But her parents wanted to get her taken care of. Well, it turns out that the guy they engage her to is not a good guy, a terrible guy, as a matter of fact. And so she decides that in order to get out of it, she is going to, instead of run away and join the circus, she's going to run away and join the USO. And he tracks her down and finds her, and then lo and behold, he turns up dead. Yes, it is a murder mystery. So what I did to get this outline going is I first came up with the blurb, the idea of the story, and then I sat down and wrote each chapter, just an idea of what would happen in each chapter. And then I go back and flesh out each of those to find out just how much I can squeeze these characters and do things to them to keep the story going. And then as you can see up at the top, well, maybe it's not marked, I have location, I have dates, I have weather. So very specific information, because I don't want the timeline to suffer if I start out on a she's at church one Sunday, and then 3 days later I claim she's at church, or it's a Saturday. Readers will pick that up. And so I am very specific about writing down the calendar so that I keep the dates straight and I keep my characters going in the right directions. So sometimes my characters have been known to walk off the page or try to lead me in a direction I hadn't really thought of. And as crazy as it sounds, I will tell you that I do follow them. I will go ahead and follow those characters as they wander off the page. And but I do generally follow my outline. So that is a bit about my writing process. Let's see. Another question that I often get is readers wonder how long it takes me to write a book. And that does depend. These novellas that I have, as you can see, they're fairly thin. They're 120 pages plus or minus, which equates to about 30,000 words. Those take me 4 or 5 months to write. They're fairly quick. I tend to write short chapters to keep the pace of the book moving. But in my novel, Under Fire, which is well over 250 pages, that took about 10 months or so. So it does take a little bit while to write a book. Although I am very excited about a class that I just recently took with Shelley Hitz. She is with Author Audience Academy, and she is a writing coach. And I was very excited to stumble on her stuff. She primarily works with nonfiction authors, but much of her material translates to those of us who write fiction. And I was very excited because what she did was teach techniques on how to find what she calls your sweet spot. When is your most productive time period during the day? When is it that you do your best writing? And she also taught several techniques on how to increase your writing speed so that in a shorter periods of time, you can get more words on the page. So I'm very excited because my hope is to be able to publish more books in a shorter period of time. And in order to do that, I need to be more efficient, because eventually I do run out of time to write, and it becomes more than just longer time in the chair to write those stories. So, so I'm very excited about that, but I did want to share that with you. Another question I got recently, one of my staff wanted to know how many unpublished and half-finished manuscripts that I have. I thought that was a great question. Because I only write one book at a time. I actually have a friend who writes multiple books at a time. I can't focus like that. I would need to do one at a time. So I actually only have one unfinished manuscript. It's the one I talked about earlier, Murder of Convenience, and I'm very pleased that I'm nearly done. I am on chapter 33, just about rounding the corner to finishing that chapter, and then I will only have 8 more chapters to go. So I'm very excited that I'm almost done with that, because as I get toward the end of a book, I'm anxious to actually start another one. So I'm very excited about that. And as far as unpublished, I currently have, I believe, 4. I have the 2 that follow Under Fire, Under Fire is book one of a trilogy, and I have written the other two books, and those, one of them is edited, one of them needs to be edited, and the other one is a standalone that I wrote, and that needs quite a bit of work, but that one is complete as well. And then I've got a contemporary. I don't do as well with contemporary. I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's my love of history, or maybe I live in the history, and so I'm just don't tend to be real good. So I'm stumbling a little bit with the editing of it, but I do have a fourth one available that's unpublished as well. So let's see. Oh, more show and tell. I have been asked how I come up with character names, and I have yearbooks, one of which, Brewster Academy, is actually the prep school at which I work. And this is a yearbook that I found at a street fair that has a book tent that is absolutely amazing. The fair opens at 10 o'clock the day it opens, and I'm there at 9:30 waiting to get in. But what I do, this is from 1947, and so I go through here, and if I need a guy, and I may need a guy whose name starts with R or B or something like that, so I will go through and I will say, okay, here is Roger Fuller Tracy, and so that is a guy beginning with R. And so because these yearbooks are from the time frame about which I write, I know that these are names that are very common in that era. And then this one is, where is this from? Oh, Teaneck High School. So I have the 1947 yearbook from the Teaneck High School. So I love those. I'm always on the lookout for yearbooks because I think they're a great way to go. Another way that I do come up with names is by websites. There are a couple of websites that you can type in baby names 1920s or baby names Edwardian era, something like that, and they will show you by popularity a list of names, both by female and by male. So a lot of different ways to figure out as far as the names. So and the last question, last two questions, they're kind of associated. I had someone recently ask me what my favorite childhood book was, and that is Are You My Mother? I don't have it nearby, or I would have done a show and tell, another show and tell. But Are You My Mother is absolutely my favorite from when I was a kid. Later, as a young adult, I would have to say my favorite books and authors were Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time. And yes, I am very excited that it's being made into a movie. And Betty Smith's A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. That book is very special to me. It is actually the book that made me want to become an author. The book itself touched me quite a great deal. And so I wanted to be able to write stories that touched people the way her book had touched me. And I'm sure there are books that touched you the same way. So if you stop by in the comments, why don't you just tell me who your literary hero was or your favorite childhood book? And I would love to know that. So, well, we are just about out of time. I've rambled on long enough this week. And hopefully I will get less stilted and more excited about, not that I'm not excited, but I feel like I tend to stutter a little bit with these live broadcasts because I'm very aware of looking at my face in the camera. So hopefully I'll be a little less stilted in the future as I practice and as I do these. So if you enjoy these videos, if you love history, you may be interested in my blog, which is located on my website, which is www.lindashentonmatchett.com. And there is a spot on the right-hand side of the page where you can sign up for my monthly newsletter, which includes places where you can find free ebooks, I include book reviews, historical tidbits, and lots of just really fun information. So thanks again for joining me, and I hope you will meet me here next week again, Thursday at 6:45. Thank you and have a blessed week.